and welcome to another Primetime Muscle. Tim Wilkins, joined by the amazing Real Deal Chris Cormier.
Real deal, baby.
The Louis Vuitton Don.
That's what's up.
Decked out as always. And a man that it brings the value up over here, looking like a true professional.
You know, Tim, the reality of the situation is when we started months ago, we were all dressed up. We were credible. We were wearing suits and ties. And
I wanted to bring a little swag to this thing.
Unfortunately, Chris
You can't bring the swag.
Unfortunately, Chris Cormier has let us down.
You can't bring the swag?
There's different types of swag. Oh, stop it. Stop it.
What? What happened? What happened?
Got the fake Louis Vuitton fashion district. $13 with a young
What happened?
Tarek El-Gindi, IFBB pro judge and mega promoter, traveling around the world. Great to have you both with us. For what it's worth, I think even his knockoff shoes cost more than my whole suit, so we're good.
That's true. Listen, he's burning paper left and right. He's got sugar daddies in the Middle East that just give him money and ask him to wear a G-string on a Saturday night. He's coming back with thousands and thousands of dollars.
That's good. That's pretty good.
Well, now we've established that for this episode. So today, we've covered in the past episodes the best of the best. And today we're covering an interesting facet, the 212 category, which realistically hasn't been around long. We're looking at who is the best 212 of all time. But guys, this is interesting because since the 212's been around, you've had Flex Lewis dominate, you've had Shawn Clarida, you've had Derek Lunsford, but what we want to look at when we look at this is not necessarily the 212, since there's a 212 category established, but the greatest of all time that would have been in the 212s that maybe would have dominated. A Shawn Ray, Mohamed Benaziza, Franco Colombo, Rich Gaspari, Lee Labrada, those guys that would have been a little bigger for their weight class, couldn't have made classic, but would have really crushed in the 212.
Yeah, I love the fact that we created this topic and talking about the greatest 212 of all times. I'm going to start with my friend Chris Cormier. It's his time to lose followers and gain some enemies.
Well, me with all the experience, I'll go first. I got to say, Benaziza, he was probably about 5'3", 5'4", but he was a massive, massive guy. Like, this guy took out Dorian Yates, not exactly at his prime, but they were young. But he had that wide lat spread. I met him one time in Venice, the late, great Benaziza. He had the pecs, he had the, he was from France. He didn't speak good English, but he was a bodybuilder that was like, he could have done so many great things. There's Flex Lewis, grainy guy. What can you say? He showed up every year, tight condition. Was just knocking everybody out left and right. There's Shawn Ray, who I grew up with, obviously from a young age. We met in high school. Stayed pretty close as we were competitors, competed. And then eventually against each other. He always told me, "You never really beat me," which I ended up beating him. So, touche. But he
that's ridiculous.
He was something you can never.
Are you gonna be reminiscing, or are you gonna pick whoever the 212 is?
I'm gonna pick.
Jack off. It was like 7 minutes of like, wow, this guy's great, that guy's great. Just pick one guy. Say this guy is the best one. You scared? I'm gonna do it. Okay, Mohamed Benaziza is the best 212 of all times. You're incapable of doing that. The reason is he beat Dorian Yates at the Night of Champion. His back thickness was phenomenal. He had the smallest waist out of all these guys. So Mohamed Benaziza is the best 212. You're scared to say it because you're scared to lose friends.
I was going to go with Shawn.
Actually, he was headed towards Shawn, and Shawn did have one of those glorious physiques.
Before I was cut off like this jerk over here. 10-gallon head.
And this is why I sit in the middle to separate these two. So, Mohamed Benaziza did have, and stacked on a very compact frame.
Listen, you ask Shawn Ray who the best 212 guy, and Shawn Ray, it's the first time in his entire life he's going to say somebody is better than him. Who? It would be Mohammed Benaziza, Shawn Ray.
He was not better.
Mohammed Benaziza is the guy that inspired Shawn Ray. And if you look
his body was way busier than
Can I just finish my point? Can I just finish my point? Since you were scared previously, just watch it.
Know what he's talking about.
Mohammed Benaziza is the pioneer of the 212. If you look at his small waist, back thickness, his flaring quads, he's the best 212. I'll put Shawn Ray in second. I'll put Flex Lewis in third. Also, honorable mentions, Danny Padilla, who in the 1980 Mr. Olympia, many people believe he should have won. You don't even know the history, so you won't mention his name. And then great friend. I mean, you forgot to mention one of your friends.
Who's that?
I guess he's not your friend anymore.
Who's that?
Flex Lewis? Flex Wheeler?
No. What is the name of your friend from Australia?
You don't even know what you're talking
What's
about.
his name?
Lee Priest?
Yeah, the guy you guys party, you know.
What?
Didn't you guys party together?
No, we didn't.
Do you think he's one of the top 5 212s of all time?
Yeah. But I'm just saying, when you said you had a small group of people you were talking about. Now you're reaching back to other people. Now you're trying to act like I wasn't.
No. I mentioned many names. I mentioned Danny Padilla. I mentioned, he mentioned Franco Columbu, Zane, and Labrada. I came to the conclusion.
When you were playing tennis, I was seeing these guys. You weren't even in bodybuilding yet.
You were not seeing Danny Padilla. You were not seeing Danny Padilla before your generation.
Padilla, do you?
He was in 1980 on stage.
I know Danny Padilla.
I mean, so then you're really Bill Cosby if you're that old.
You don't.
Okay?
So let me dial this back.
You're Bill Cosby then.
You don't.
Let's look at some of the famous runners-up, the second and third place guys. The Shawn Rays, Rich Gaspari, Lee Labrada. Chris, you were in that second, third. You were all in that same era, battling for the Olympia year after year. All those guys between 5'6" and 5'8", 5'9", packing on too much muscle to be classic, so they all would have been comfortable in that giant killer position of 212.
Yeah, Labrada beat a lot of giants. And just to have a close, relation with some of these guys, I got to tell you, I mean, I still think Shawn Ray would have beat most of these guys. He was too detailed from head to toe. All over his body.
So balanced.
So busy.
Yeah.
Shawn is the second, in my opinion. Now, we forgot to mention a few names. One of the few guys that actually won the Mr. Olympia is Chris Dickerson. Chris Dickerson won the Mr. Olympia, and he was under 212. In addition to that, one of my favorite bodybuilders of all times is Muhammad Makawi. He would be considered a 212, and he was a phenomenal poser. So,
kid out of New York. He was from Steve's gym. He won the Olympia 2. It was 202 at the time.
Kevin English. I'm here to help you.
English. He was dominant. Him.
David Henry.
David Henry. He's actually competing this. This year at the
British
Arnold.
Yeah.
At the UK Arnold. So he's still in the ball game, but he also. I mean, I think Shawn would have beat these guys if I had to bet on it. I think, but Kevin English was tough to beat. He was a mass monster for the 202 class.
Well, and then where does that put the 212s of today? And I think Derek Lunsford would shape up really nicely against some of those guys. Flex, of course, had a dominant, well-balanced physique. But there was something about that era that was a different quality of muscle. Where do you put Flex in that mix of those classics?
Oh, right there.
Yeah.
Right there, man. He was, he had, from head to toe, he was definitely grainy. And, he was knocking him out every year, like I said. And he's just, bodybuilder's bodybuilder. I met him when he was like 19 years old. He was ready to go already. You could see the greatness in him already backstage when I met him in England. So, yeah, I saw it from a young age, and he was already calling himself Flex, so he was ready to go from the time he started.
I think the great thing about Flex Lewis, we often talk about conditioning as one of the main components that we're missing in the majority of contests. And Flex Lewis, for almost a decade, he won, so many times the 212, and he was always on point in his conditioning. And that's a testament to his greatness. He was massive. He had those huge quads and the calves and always conditioned. And I would say that structurally, I think Shawn Ray would be superior structure-wise and Mohamed Benaziza, but I think he was the one that accomplished more mass, and his consistency and his conditioning was great. Unfortunately, like Chris said, we could not see Mohamed Benaziza for a long period of time, but the little we saw him winning pro shows against the big guys, and when you're talking about Benaziza beating the big guys, you're talking about beating Dorian Yates.
Yeah, that's, his lat spread was just as wide as Dorian's. That was Shawn Ray's weak point, with the lat spread from the back, and that's when people found out that was his weakness. And I think that's when the notion of him being the top guy kind of diminished, in my opinion. I think he got exposed at one show, and then from there it was like the decline and ultimately his demise.
They went after it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He was chum in the water.
Oh, well, and he's my chum every year at the Olympiad. I look forward to seeing him. That was a nice segue, wasn't it? It's kind of hacky. And the Olympia pay-per-view. And we got a lot more primetime muscle. We'll be talking more about the sport, past, present, and future when we come back. We're back with more Primetime Muscle. Tarek El-Guindi, Chris Cormier, and Tim Wilkins talking about the best female bodybuilder of all time. And that's an interesting premise, because we've got two that hold the titles 8 and 10 times respectively. Iris Kylie and Lenda Murray. Yes,
Tim. Lenda Murray won the Olympia 8 times. Iris won the Olympia 10 times. Nobody has won more Olympias than Iris Kylie. That's for the record. And it's going to be very hard to beat her. Is she the winningest female bodybuilder of all times? Undeniably. Was she dominant? Yes. She won convincingly during her decade of success. However, I believe Lenda Murray was a superior bodybuilder on stage. And I also believe Lenda Murray was more influential for the category than Iris Kylie. I think Lenda Murray had better genetics, better flow, and in addition to that, she was more gracious on stage. In terms of impact to the sport, Iris Kylie would not be on stage. What are you laughing at? What are you laughing at?
Go, man, just go.
What are you laughing at? What are you laughing at? What is so funny?
I'm just admiring myself in the camera.
It's ridiculous. Anyway,
go, man.
This is ridiculous. Well, we're all going to lose a job because of you, man. You come in dressed like you're going to take off. Kylie was like, I thought he was going to take off instead of coming back to work.
How about I take off on you?
It's ridiculous. And now you don't even pay attention to the topic. I hope we can edit that, Nico. For the love of God, we need to edit that.
On here?
Okay.
So, let's circle back. So I was emceeing in the years when Iris Kylie, Vicky Gates were going at, and you had Valentina Chapiga and Denise Messino and one of my other favorites that's eluding me as I'll think of it in a minute. But it was a war, and they were a different league. But even then, you talk about the evolution of women's bodybuilding. You talk about the physiques from Corey and Rachel McLeish, Sharon Bruno, up to Lenda, which was a whole different level. And then you talk about the next evolution of physique with Iris, and now on to Andrea Shaw.
Yeah, Bev Francis came in shockingly shaking things up early on, you know, pumping iron to the women, all this stuff. I remember I drove 2 hours just to watch that movie and 2 hours back just to, you know, just to be up on what was happening. You know, women's bodybuilding came a long way over the years. I've always admired it. We used to go to competitions and it was just everyone's in boat necks and baggy pants, men and women dressed the same. You know, that was the outfit. You know, but moving on into when Lenda Murray hit the scene, it was after Corey. She was Corey, but something different, something super X-frame, super, I mean, I'm talking about hips small, quads big, waist small, delts out of this world. No one had this type of body, and no one's ever been able to bring that type of body to the stage.
Okay, now look at the X.
Man.
Look at that.
See that? No one.
That's some Tony Freeman right there.
I'm sorry.
And then, but the size difference and the conditioning difference between her and Iris, and that's that evolution I'm talking about.
Yes.
Well, listen, I obviously Iris is more muscular, and you know the category, you know, with Iris, and then you know we had Kim Krzyzewski in between them. Kim Krzyzewski beat Lenda Murray, and then Iris, but. In my personal opinion, the best female bodybuilder of all times is Lenda Murray. And when you look at this, I think this is undisputed, one of the most beautiful, drop-dead gorgeous physiques you'll ever see. It's not only about being more muscular, it's not only about being more defined, but it's the X-frame, it's the grace, it's the posing. You know, look at the posing compared. This is a front lat spread by both of them, and you can see that it's more appealing to look at this X-frame by Lenda Murray than Iris, even though Iris is more muscular, is more defined. You know, Lenda is more captivating.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of Lenda Murray. I mean, take nothing away from Iris. I knew Iris from her amateur days. Huge calves. I mean, she had muscularity that Lenda didn't have. But this, I mean, she was born with certain body parts that was just out of this world. But as you see Lenda with the quads, probably a little bit bigger than her waist. I don't know how she fit clothes at that time, but she probably had specially made clothes because you see that hourglass physique and those delts out of this world.
Each quad is bigger than her waist.
Clavicles are wide, lats are developed and low cut. So it's just, I mean, you could never beat it. So that's like my Lee Haney of the women's category.
I agree with Chris. Don't like agreeing with him, but I agree with Chris. Lenda Murray is the Lee Haney of bodybuilding. She is a trailblazer in the category. You know, beautiful, just a beautiful girl, beautiful muscle. And Iris is a great champion. I think Iris had a great quantity of muscle and great conditioning. But I think in the femininity side, Lenda Murray is a little bit more appealing in terms of female bodybuilding.
Yeah, but also Iris, the competition that Lenda had and Iris had started to change over time, because almost like Phil Heath, he was winning Olympias, but it wasn't the depth of the olden days that we had beyond his time. So I don't know if that has something to do with the perception of how good they actually were, but I know Iris wasn't beating exactly the same champions as Lenda.
So that's what I was going back to, and that other name just came to me, is Yaxeni Oraken. So you had Yaxi, Vicky, Iris, Valentina Chapiga. There were about 4 or 5 in that top 5 that made it a war. They were all neck and neck every year.
Right.
Yeah, no, listen, Iris Kylie is the winningest bodybuilder of all times. You got to put her on top of Lee Haney and Ronnie Coleman when it comes number of titles, including Lenda Murray, who has 8. She was able to dominate for a decade. It's going to be very hard to beat this record. But in my opinion, is you have bodybuilders that have won less titles, but they have been better, right? You look at Dexter Jackson. He just won 1 Mr. Olympia. but he's one of the greatest physiques we've ever seen. Maybe a few guys won 2 or even 3 Mr. Olympias, but they're not as good as Dexter Jackson.
3 or 4 Arnolds, though. And a lot, and
5 Arnolds.
5 Arnolds.
Winningest bodybuilder of all times, Ashley Cole Wasser, just surpassed him this year.
Wow. All right, now, this back shot really brings it back because you got a couple poses over there where they're fairly evenly matched, but you see a difference in generation and the evolution of the sport. This, I don't. This Lenda looks so big, it's absolutely perfect from the back.
Yeah.
Chris?
Yes, you can see the torso difference. This one's a little bit shorter torso. She had the longer legs, but you can see the massive calves I was talking about. These ones, you're born with those insertions. And you have like Lenda with the rhomboids, the trapezius, the latissimus dorsi, you see the low insertion of the lats. And when you can see that nice line, stop right there, you know exactly, it's like a human anatomy chart.
That's all that is, an anatomy chart of perfection.
So that's what you want when you compete. You want to be able to see all your muscles down to the very insertions of everything. That's when you're really bodybuilding.
Talk to us, Judge.
Well, you know, a lot of people think, well, Iris Kylie was more muscular, and she was in many areas. You can look at the size of the legs here, the lines on the hamstrings, like Chris said, the calves, the peak on the biceps. But this is a pose that you can look at the back double biceps of Lenda Murray, and it's not only the fact that she has thickness on that back, Tim, but it's also the V-taper is a little bit more dramatic than Iris, right? And even in the posing, she makes her physique a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. I cannot emphasize enough, Tim, posing is so important. Is almost as important as the muscular development you accomplish throughout the months of your working out, the conditioning you battle so hard, posing and posing and posing. And in this, you can see that Lenda Murray was a better poser than Iris Kylie.
Well, now we've got one new champion that's hoping to, at some point, Andrea Shaw. This would be her 3rd Olympia if she retains her title, I believe. What's that? How does she looks like she's right in between these two as that balance of femininity and size and conditioning.
You're right. Andrea Shaw has the potential of becoming one of the greatest. We just have to wait and see if she can continue to win.
Well, I don't know that we really stuck our toes in the sand and drew that line of who is the greatest, but they are 2 great champions, obviously, with 8 and 10 Olympia wins, respectively. Two of the best that will ever be. So that's hands down. That I think is what we've decided on. And we'll decide on more when we come back after this commercial break on Primetime Muscle.
You diet down, train hard, and supplement smart for months. When the time comes to step on stage, don't leave your tan to chance. Go with the pros. Pro Tan. #1 worldwide since 1987 and the official sponsor of the Olympia for the last 15 years. Don't step on stage without it. Pro Tan.
All right, the road to the IFBB Pro League has always been through one of the channels, Nationals, USAs, North Americans, and we were talking over the last few weeks, kind of as we chit-chat about the segments, who those greatest champions are and where their careers have led them to there. And as one of those former champions, Chris Cormier, who are some of those guys, the greatest USA, North American, and Nationals champs?
Well, Tim, you got to start with Lee Haney, the greatest of the greatest, national champion. He's right there, crowned by Jim Mannion, and you can't help to think national. USA, I mean, Flex Wheeler, I gotta say, when he won the USA, is probably one of the best looks at, someone coming from amateur into pro. Next year I won it. And then there was...
See how we dropped that? That was subtle. Next year I won it.
Yeah. And a deeper lineup.
Did you, did you, you know, that's one of those things about USA's nationals and all these
But
things.
it was all, the top 7 all went pro, I got to say. I got to leave an asterisk there, but I got to give flex.
Well, before Tara grabs the wheel, I got to say, it is always wild to me with like a USA's or a nationals, and I talk to my buddies and I say, how was middleweights? There was 45 guys. How was light heavies? There was 37 guys. You go into one of these national shows, it's deep.
And I got Johnny Morant for the North American.
Okay, so here we go. Here we go, Chris.
Johnny Morant.
Chris Cormier won the 1993 Mr. USA's. Very impressive. One of the great USA champions is Chris Cormier. You have to add Flex Wheeler 1 year before, 1992. He was impressive. Right after his victory at the 1992 Mr. USA's, he went on to Ironman and Arnold Classic to have an explosive rookie year.
And then second in Olympia.
Second in the Olympia to Dorian Yates. Let's not forget, 2005, we had Phil Heath, great genetics. He had just won the Junior Nationals, came to the USA's, was not the favorite, and dominated. 2008, Brandon Curry, red trunks, you know, just a phenomenal genetics. So we've had great champions. But I'm going to tell you this. Chris mentioned Lee Haney, incredible national champion. So now we're talking about a different show, because right now all the young kids call it nationals. You know what I mean? I'm doing nationals in Las Vegas. It's not the nationals, it's the USA's. JM and I gave up on the fight. JM, we gave up. We lost it.
Nationals.
They say nationals in Las Vegas. They say nationals in Ohio. But anyways, going to the nationals in Miami, traditionally in Florida, Lee Haney, Shawn Ray, right? Lee Haney, Shawn,
yeah.
Kevin Levrone. Now, people don't know this,
I was
but
in that show.
And you lost it. And
Yeah.
Jay Cutler turned pro at the Nationals, but he didn't win the overall. Willie Stalling won the overall in that year. So Jay Cutler is also a national champion. Moving on to the North Americans, people forget about it. Dexter Jackson is a North American champion.
96, 97?
One as a light heavy, right?
Light heavy, I believe it was 95.
95.
Now, Frank Zane is a North American champion. And you know who else is a North American champion? Shawn Rhoden. 2009, Shawn Rhoden. Now, we know one of the most impressive national champions?
Who's that?
People thought he was going to be the next Lee Haney.
Who's that?
Cedric McMillan, 2009. People, they were raving about Cedric. He came on stage, he shocked the world. I was right next to George Farah, and we say, this guy will win 10 Mr. Olympias. He was so dominant. Rest in peace.
Rest in
great
peace.
competitor.
What a
Had
loss.
the body for it, for sure.
You know, though, and you think to some people, you say, what do you want to sacrifice? Your family, your love life, your career, whatever it is to chase that
Whatever
goal.
it takes.
Now, Cedric had to balance not only his family, but his service to the military. And he did the best he could and showed up and crushed some shows. And other shows, he showed up as good as he could. Like that last year with the special invite to the Olympia, when he's coming off of illness, injury, and being deployed. So that's really impressive. I want to throw that out there because I'm such a huge fan, and he was such a loss to me.
You know, ultimately, we look at some of these great athletes and their legacy. And, you know, Cedric liked to call himself Arnold's favorite. Arnold said, I just love Cedric McMillan's physique. And I had a chance to watch Cedric McMillan turning pro. I had an opportunity to judge him for many years. And in 2020 in Brazil, he came there to do a guest posing. And we were on stage, and I asked him to say something in Portuguese. And his reaction was, that's easy. And he said it with such enthusiasm, and the whole Brazilian crowd went crazy. This man lived his life to the fullest. And he left a legacy. If my son or daughter ever asks me who was Arnold Schwarzenegger's favorite bodybuilder, I'll have 2 words as a response: it's Cedric McMillan.
Now, Chris, you mentioned runner-up and not taking the overall back in some of these shows. You know, there's some controversy now with, and I'm certainly not going to complain. I'm still waiting for my pro card someday. We said that's what, 2074?
2074. You should have a little bit more chest.
The over 85 class. But, you know, you're giving away top 1 or 2 in some categories across all classes and all divisions. Back in the 80s, 90s, into the 2000s, did you have to take overall to get that pro card, or was it still by class?
Yes, Tim, that's a great question because, yes, only one went pro out of the show that I was in the USA. So that was the overall champion was going to go pro. I wasn't the favorite going in, so they, you know, but I believed myself, and that's what a lot of these guys got to do is believe in yourself, as I did, and you know I came here with the victory. So that's, you know, that I don't know when the USA when it started doing more, but obviously, you know, when one guy's going pro, they're scrapping for that placing. So
now you've got an arsenal of knowledge. Let's talk. Who are the guys that you can think of that won the USA's Nationals or North Americans and went on to killer debuts in the pros? And who made that jump that just wasn't quite ready for that bottleneck up the next level?
So that's a great point. You know, you look at Flex Wheeler, he was one of the guy that impressed the most. Right off the bat, winning 2 pro shows and placing second at the Olympia. That was unprecedented. We look at Derek Lunsford. Derek Lunsford turned pro, and then won his pro debut at Tampa, and then placed second to Flex Lewis. Now, you look at Chris Cormier, and Brendan Curry. Chris Cormier and Brendan Curry turned pro, and both of them were projected to be, you know, Chris was the next Flex Wheeler. But it took Chris a little bit longer, and then Chris went into that rampage, winning 4 Ironman champions and then placing top 3 at the Olympia. Same thing happened to Brendan Curry. Right? So sometimes some guys, it just takes them a little bit longer. Chris Cormier, Brendan Curry, Ronnie Coleman, it took them a little bit longer. And then some guys, they came out of the bed storming, and a lot of times they didn't sustain that talent. But, you know, it's different. You get to judge. When Cedric won, we were all 100% sure this guy was going to win many Olympias, and unfortunately it didn't happen. But it's nice to see the projection of some of these guys. Shawn Rhoden won in 2009, and it took him years and years and years to develop into a champion and to eventually win the Mr. Olympia.
Let me correct you a little bit there, buddy.
You ain't correcting me on anything.
Second.
Let me tell you that right now.
I took second in my first pro show, which was 5 months after.
What show was that?
That was a pro Ironman. I took second. I took fourth in.
No, you won the Ironman 4 times in 1998,
Bro, you weren't even alive.
1999, and 2000.
You weren't even alive.
Okay, don't try to project your defeats.
I took second in the first.
Okay,
my first. Pro
don't try to project your defeats.
You weren't there, Chris.
People,
okay.
I took second in my first pro show.
Well,
and I took fourth the weekend next in the Arnold Classic. And I took 6th in my first Olympia. I am projected as one of the best already as a rookie. Can you just chill?
Oh, God. We need to edit that. You want to compare yourself to the success that Flex Wheeler had. Let's talk about the Flex Wheeler success.
So, Michael Francois, he took second to me in the USA, but then he won the Nationals. He reeled off 4 pro shows and placing 7th, I believe, in his first Olympia. There's also Kevin LeBron. Went on a flew from amateur show to the Junior Nationals, taking second to Paul DeMeo, then won the Nationals, won Chicago, won I believe another show, went to Olympia, took second Olympia, all in the first, all in one calendar year, all of that.
Well,
what did you guys say about that one?
So many great champions, and it is such a different pipeline to the pros now. And then the pro pipeline, of course, is to win that pro show and stamp your ticket for the Mr. Olympia. And that Mr. Olympia will be December 15th to the 18th in all classes, including wellness, bikini, physique, men's physique, women's physique. 212 and Classic Physique will all be there trying for that title. And an amazing expo. So much fun to be had. Of course, the scene there is always incredible. December 15th to the 18th. As always, for Primetime Muscle, like, share, follow, tell your friends, leave your wonderful comments. And we thank you for watching on behalf of Chris Cormier.
That's what's up.
The Real Deal and Tarek Gilgindi. I'm Tim Wilkins. Thanks for watching Primetime Muscle. We'll see you soon.